I am O'Shane Gibson. I am a guidance counselor. So I am in the field
Right.
of mental health.
All right. All right. So let's talk a little bit about red flags. What exactly are red flags in a relationship?
I mean, in the layman term, I guess, or in my opinion, red flags are things that we don't we don't appreciate. It's things that we don't like. So a red flag is a good intuitive image to help you process what you are really feeling in a sense. But my understanding of red flag is that we tend to put a red flag in a box. So these are red flags. But at the end of the day, you cannot term it like that. Why? Because every individual is different. So every individual is going to have their own red flags. Yes, there are some general red flags, right? General right across the board that everybody would like in a relationship. And if it is not happening, it can be termed as a red flag. But one of the important things is we have to understand who we are, what we want, so that we can determine what the red flags are in a relationship. And the general red flags that we talk about is like the lack of communication, the lack of trust, the and one of the things that we a lot of persons term as red flag, but we should not term it as red flag, because if it is that we understand who we are and what we stand for, it cannot and it should not affect your relationship. The fact that your friends and your family don't approve of the person you're dating, that should not be a red flag. If it is that you understand who you are and what you stand for, the opinion of others should not cause you to deem the person as a red flag or whatever the case may be. Because at the end of the day, you will know what you want out of the relationship. You would know what you want from the person and so on. There are some persons who depict controlling behaviors. They always want to be in control. Some other things are, there is no common ground. Two parties or both parties want different things. They also have not being able to be your true self around the individual. So every time you're around the individual, you have to put on a mask, you have to put on a facade. So really and truly, that person does not know who you are. And if it is that you have to do that, it simply means that you yourself don't know who you are. So I mean, in my opinion, those are some little red flags. And you also have the abusive relationship, and we go back to domestic violence when we say that abusive relationship does not mean or abusive behavior does not mean physical alone. It's all about the emotional, the psychological, the finances. Also, one of the things that I don't think a lot of persons know, if it is that you are in a relationship and your partner does not want you to work because they are working enough to sustain the family, but at the same time, you have to always go to them to ask them for money, and then they decide whether or not the money should be used for that reason. It is a form of financial abuse, because that person has power over you and your spending, what you spend your money on. And you also have to take into consideration that there is also isolation abuse. If it is that you're in a relationship and your partner doesn't want you to go and see your friends, see your families, they dictate who you should see and when you should see them. That is a form of abuse. So there's a lot of things that is that comes out of abuse. But as Jamaicans or as our culture, how we're socialized, how we're cultured, we tend to believe that abuse is only the thumping, the kicking, and the boxing, and all of those things.
How would you say, how important is it for a person to look out for red flags or to know red flags in relationships?
No, trust me, it is very important for an individual to look out for red flags. Because one, when you look out for these red flags and when you identify these red flags, then you can try to eliminate them or work, or you do know what to do at that point, so that, because you see, red flags, they start from small something, they start from some very small something, and if it is that you don't take control of them, then they escalate into some big things, and that is something that you want to prevent if it is that you want your relationship to go further. For example, my relationship, I realized that my girlfriend, she's always on her phone. So I said to her, like, listen, I mean, I understand that both of us, you know, we have a phone, we're young people, or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, you cannot be so consumed by your phone, because you need to acknowledge that the other person is in the room. Because if it is that you're always on your phone, what is going to happen is that I am going to go and find something else to do. And in me going and finding something else to do, it simply means that somebody else can easily come along and entertain me, right? And then that is going to cause some problem in the relationship. So we have to see those things that we don't really appreciate from the onset in a way to mitigate them and so forth. And if it is that you have an idea of where your relationship should go, where you want your relationship, these are things that you have to look out for, right? Because you have to see the issues, solve the issues, so that your relationship can run smoothly. And mind you, no relationship is perfect, you know. If your relationship will have no problem, trust me, something wrong. It simply means that somebody in a relationship do not care about what the other person is doing, because no relationship is perfect. You have to have some form of argument, but the important thing is how you have the argument and how you solve the argument. And a lot of times we tend to snowball, which means that may I argue about something today, and with the next argument you bring it back up. No, if it is that we have an argument about something today, we fix it today and we move on. The next argument, you should not come back. And snowballing is a red flag. It simply means that the person will never let go of things, and every argument there will always be dragging back those things and opening up back wounds and all of these things. So those are some of the things that we have to look out for and be mindful of when we're in a relationship.
And how can these victims of domestic violence get help?
All right, so how can they get help? First, they have to acknowledge that they want help. Because one, you cannot help somebody if they are not willing to get the help. Just like how they say you can't get donkey got the well or whatever the case may be, but you can't force him to drink it. See? You know say donkey thirsty, but you can't force him to drink water unless he wants water to drink. Right? So these persons have to understand that they are in a toxic situation and they need help. They need a way out. So guess what? We all have that friend we can talk to. Talk to your friend. There are so many agencies around that you can talk to. You can go Woman Center, and you have different counseling services around. You have free counseling, you have paid counseling, you have shelters that are now operating in Jamaica that women can reach out to as a way to get away from their abusers and so forth. But as I said, it is important for the person to identify that they have a problem, they are in a toxic situation, and they want to get out. Because nobody can help you unless you want the help. And I mean, we tend to believe that seeking counseling in Jamaica is for mad people, or is for a person who, have enough problem or whatever the case may be. But nobody is without a challenge. We all have a challenge. And yes, I am a guidance counselor, but at the end of the day, when me sit down and me fix everybody, who is there to fix me? I have to go and get somebody to fix me, because when I take on everybody's problem, I need somebody to go and talk to, right? And it's not that I'm crazy. It's just that what is happening is very overwhelming, and I understand and I have identified that I have an issue. So now I have to go and get the help to solve the issue. Because if I don't solve the issue, it is going to lead into something else. And that is why there is so much cycle of hurt in our society, because you don't get the help and then you go and inflict your pain on somebody else. I'm not sure if you have ever heard the term hurting people hurt people, because you don't know how to take care of somebody because you are hurting. You don't know how to love somebody because you are hurting. You have never felt love, so how can you portray love? You don't know how to, right? So those are some of the things that we have to look for. When it comes on to relationships, it is very important that persons are ready both persons are ready. If one person ready and the other one not ready, it don't make sense, because there is always going to be some form of setback, and further down the line the relationship is going to fall apart. So it is important for both persons to be ready, psychologically, emotionally, financially. If one person is not financially stable, it is important for you to note it from the onset, to let the other person know whether or not they can take on that challenge, or whatever the case may be. And you see, one of the things that I find is that we're not cultured in such a way that we're able to express our emotions. We're able to talk about what we're feeling. So we have all of this baggage that we take into relationships, not realizing that taking this baggage is only going to ruin the relationship. Hence, person 6 months now in a relationship, you're gonna know next one, 3 months, then you're gonna know next one. Why? Because you're taking all of these baggages around. And when persons realize that you have all of this baggage and you're not willing to work through this baggage, then we're going to just put aside, because they cannot deal with that. And it is important for us to hurt, go through the process of hurting, so that we can heal before we move on. But a lot of us, we don't know how to be by ourselves. We feel that we should always have somebody because we want to do the sex, or we want to do the cuddling, or whatever the case may be. But we need to take time for ourselves to know who we are, what we want, what we stand for, and where we see ourselves and where we see our relationship, so that we can have a successful relationship.
And can you explain what is domestic violence and the impact it has on young people or women in general?
All right, so domestic violence. So one of the things that one of the things that I've come to understand is that when we hear domestic violence, a lot of persons are only thinking about physical violence, but that is not the case. So domestic violence, is any behavior that its purpose is to gain power over somebody else, right? So it can be in the form of physical violence, it can be emotional abuse, it can be financial abuse, because it was just the other days I learned about financial abuse. So once you're trying to gain power and control over somebody, over your partner or your spouse or whatever the case may be within the household setting, it can be considered as domestic violence. So it doesn't have to be just the physical, but it is other forms of abuse once you're trying to gain power and control over your partner, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, or your intimate family member.
All right, so can you tell me some impact of being in a domestic violence relationship?
There are several impacts. So when it comes on to the victim of domestic violence, you have the result of that can lead to death, illness, injuries, disability, whatever the case may be. There may be emotional or psychological trauma, based on how devastating the impact of the situation is on the individual, which may lead to physical, mental, or emotional health, including depression, anxiety, shame, anger, or whatever the case may be. You also have homelessness. Some persons become homeless as a result of domestic violence. There is the use of alcohol and other substances. You also look at physical health injuries and problems, such as some of those may not be able to be medically treated depending on how severe it is or what it is and stuff like that. So those are some of the effects you have on the victim. You also have effects on the family, you have effects on the community, you have effects on the children. Because one of the things is that I don't think persons who are, let us say the adults now who are in the who are engaged in domestic violence, I don't think they are cognizant of the impact it has on the children. Yes, they know that it may have an impact, but they don't understand the extent to which it affects the children. Because yes, it is going to cause psychological trauma for them, even though they may not be physically hurt in a sense by the abuser, but at the end of the day they're going to be emotionally hurt, they're going to be psychologically hurt, and out of that it is going to lead to other things. It may lead to them inflicting hurt on themselves. It may lead to eating and sleeping disturbances, emotional distress. They have low self-esteem. So there's a whole range of effects that that a child can endure or encounter as a result of domestic violence happening around them.